The movie is Halloween Ends. So Halloween Ends is the story of Laurie Strode 4 years after the events of Halloween Kills, which is weird because Halloween and Halloween Kills are the same night. They take place right next to each other. And it feels like Halloween Kills ends with the feeling that we will just pick right up on the same Halloween in 2019, but not so. 4 years later, Laurie Strode has moved on. She's writing a memoir. She's living with her daughter or granddaughter, Allison. Michael Myers has not been seen since Halloween 2019, that fateful night. And things are pretty fine in Haddonfield, Illinois. Like, actually, Laurie's being kind of a whole character now, and she's not just like this crazy survivor from The Walking Dead kind of person who's armed to the teeth and ready for vengeance. She's grown as a person, and she's writing this memoir and reflecting on her time. And that's when, one fateful night, a young babysitter is accused of a horrific crime, and suddenly the evils and the plights of Haddonfield turn on this person, and it's up to Laurie to finally face this evil that might be bigger than herself. That, I think, is probably the best way to summarize this movie without giving a lot away. Andy, I was stunned how much of this movie isn't in the trailers. There's a whole
definitely something we need to talk about.
The whole plot line that is not at all in the trailers for this movie. And the trailers, in fact, make it look a lot like Halloween Kills. Going to be the big face-off between Michael and Laurie, right? You got some shots of Michael Myers with the messed up mask after he got burned in Halloween Kills, and Laurie's like, "Come and get it," right? It just looks more like that, and I think that might have hurt it. But what they did here is different, for better or worse. So let's jump into talking about it. Andy, what did you think of Halloween Kills? Halloween Ends. God, Halloween Ends. What did you think of Halloween Ends? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There are some good ideas in this. There are some interesting things, some that work better than others. I think the biggest issue is that this feels like like it belongs in a different trilogy of movies, or just kind of on its own. It feels like we're almost starting again from the beginning. It does. The first two films happen the same night. You think the third one is going to pick up where that one's, and going to be a big showdown. But yeah, there's lots of decisions that are like, we're 4 years later, not the same night. Laurie Strode isn't really the main character. Michael Myers isn't really the main character. And I do think this is one of the things we should get into, is the plot is very different from pretty much any other Halloween movie that you may have seen, where we're introduced to a character named Corey who has an accident at the beginning of the film and then turns into the town recluse. He's shunned, he's bullied, he's kind of turned into a monster by the town, which I think is supposed to be some sort of weird social commentary, and kind of walks in the footsteps of Michael Myers. But it's a very bizarre, like, you have this character that we have not seen in two films, all of a sudden is kind of the main character of this movie. And it doesn't show you that in the trailers. And
not at all.
Like, I saw a great Twitter thing that was like, Michael Myers had a great cameo in his own film. So the thing is, that plot is interesting on its own. It does, but it totally does not work in the context of the other two films. This person, Corey, also becomes weirdly romantically involved with Laurie Strode's granddaughter, Allison, and they almost have this rom-com thing going on at the beginning. It's just bizarre in terms of the two films that came before it. On its own, it kind of works.
Yeah, so Halloween Ends does this funny tightrope walk where it's trying to, I think, live up to spiritually what the original films were doing, but also like wrap those up in a way that's more satisfying than the previous wrap-ups we've had with like Halloween H2O in 2000, where there was already a movie where Laurie Strode and Michael Myers had their big face-off. This already happened. Like, we're doing it again, except from a different angle now, and saying, no, just imagine those movies in heaven. And the thing Halloween Ends, I think, is trying to do well is imitate the spirit of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which was a Halloween movie completely devoid of Michael Myers. The only one. Michael Myers is not in it at all. That is a movie about this company that produces these killer masks. When you wear them, they hypnotize you and melt your face, or I don't even really remember, Silver Shamrock. And that movie was the movie John Carpenter, the original creator of Halloween, wanted to make, because that's what he wanted Halloween to be, an anthology series. Each movie was going to be a different spin on a different Halloween night where something's happening. But when Halloween came out, it was so universally acclaimed that the studio begged him to make a second one that was a follow-up. They make Halloween 2, The Return of Michael Myers, and he does this thing, and then they make Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and it is universally panned. Everybody's like, this movie's terrible because there's no Michael Myers, and this isn't what we wanted. Over time, people have come around on Halloween 3, Season of the Witch as its own horror movie, as its own thing, and people are like, actually, it's pretty good. But as a Halloween movie, it doesn't really stick the landing because it lacks a lot of like the thematic ties that would make it fit in the universe of Halloween. And this one kind of does the same thing in that way. Like, I have to give David Gordon Green credit. Like, he did kind of echo that original 3-film structure for lack of a structure. And that brings all of its problems. People didn't like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch because it didn't feel like it fit. And I think people don't like this movie because it doesn't feel like it fits. In fact, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch did not have to put in Michael Myers and talk about him and wrap up his story and give us a satisfying bow with Laurie Strode. This movie has to be its own thing and also carry that weight. But put Michael Myers in the spotlight as well, because he's the guy on the poster that sells tickets, and Jamie Lee Curtis is on your press tour, so people got to know she's in it. And somehow you end up with this like advertising campaign where you've completely ignored the actual plot of the movie and the actual characters in lieu of like the framing device of Michael and Laurie and their final face off. And like, that's misleading. And I think that leads to people not liking what's happening. But that being said, we do need to talk about the actual plot and what happens in it, because I don't think it's all that bad.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because it would work on its own, and it would work if this weren't a Michael Myers film. If it was this story about a man shunned by society, it's a bit like Joker, shunned and mistreated by society that turns him into this killer. That's an interesting bit of horror you could do in social commentary. It just doesn't really make sense in this movie. One take that I saw that I thought was really interesting is like, this trilogy feels like it's backwards. Like, the third movie feels like it should be where we start with Laurie trying to move on, trying to live a normal life, and she can't because Michael comes back. And then in what would be the end of the film, she turns into like Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, lock, stock, two smoking barrels, and finishes him off. But again, it's all kind of happening what feels like in reverse. We're missing this badass character who's trained all her life for this confrontation that we're introduced to in the first film, and she's just trying to act like none of it happened. And she's also hardly in the film.
Yeah, no, you're right. I hadn't heard that read, but you're totally on the ball. I think this would have been better as Halloween. And then Halloween Kills could have been what happens in the events of Halloween, and Halloween Ends could have been the events of Halloween Kills. And I think that would have been a tighter, more put together trilogy. This one does, to me, undeniably feel like they did not write this in advance. There was no forethought when they made the original Halloween that there was going to be a trilogy. Maybe somebody had like an inkling, but had no idea where things were going to go. I think they played all their Michael Myers chips in Halloween Kills, which is good, by the way. It's not bad. It's a fine movie. But then in this one, they were like, we have to do something different. We have to run in a different direction. We can't just do the same thing again. What are we going to do? How are we going to wrap this all up? And they decided to make it more about a story of like Haddonfield's shared trauma about like Michael Myers, which the other two films kind of did too, especially Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills gets a lot into
Evil
like,
dies tonight.
Evil dies tonight. Yeah, like that's definitely a thing. But this one, they have to like bring it back around and make it this kind of wraparound story. Built on the back of this babysitter character played by Rowan Campbell, who previously has done some TV. It was in a Hardy Boys series. He was in Virgin River on Netflix. Nothing too exciting. He's up and coming, and he's fine in this movie, by the way. It puts a lot of weight on the wrong character, and it leaves Michael Myers and Laurie Strode like kind of out in the cold. And then when you do get to their kind of big, finale, like it's like, I don't know. It's like second chunk of the third act stuff. You're like, all right, like you kind of don't care at that point. The movie's almost over. You're checking your watch. Your popcorn's empty. You're ready for a refill. You need to go to the bathroom. So, like, I don't know. Like, let's get into it because there are things that I do like about this movie outside of just talking about like the framing of it. let's jump into the plot. So like we said, the film opens with a babysitter meeting this young boy in the family, and you're going to be watching him tonight. And along the way, something terrible happens, which immediately launches us into Halloween. And we come back out of our title sequence with Laurie Strode, and she is a totally changed woman, completely different character, like than Halloween Kills and Halloween and Halloween Kills. And it's been 4 years, which is also a huge jump. Like there was nothing in the previous films to indicate this was happening. They did not tell anybody it was going to be a 4-year jump, so this is a surprise. And Laurie is a totally different person. She's living with her granddaughter from the previous film. They got this nice house in Haddonfield. They still live there. Why would they move?
Why would they move?
Like,
yeah.
Why would they move? And she's writing her memoir, and she doesn't have any guns, and she doesn't have any knives. And she's like, I've moved on, even though Michael basically got away at the end of the last movie. It's fine. I'm just going to learn to live with love in my heart. And meanwhile, like the town of Haddonfield has kind of rallied up right against this babysitter. Who was a kid who basically he get away with what happened, but after a few years has kind of gotten out on good behavior and is just trying to live his life and get his life started and like find a college to go to or whatever. And nobody likes him. He's a town freak. And Laurie Strode, meanwhile, is also kind of the town freak, right? The victim of the Michael Myers stuff. The whole Michael Myers saga brought all this evil to Haddonfield, right? People blame her for it. So the two of them like find each other, and they actually have a bit of a kinship. And that's when Laurie's granddaughter, Allison, who was in the previous two films, meets this young boy, and they start to fancy one another, which is a bit of a surprise. You don't expect like a romance with this new character who the film opens with. Like, it's kind of surprising, right? It puts Laurie and Allison on the back burner for this other new individual.
Yeah, this is one of the things that kind of comes out of nowhere as their meet cute, which is completely it's not realistic. It's not convincing. That's what the word I'm looking for. They meet in about 2 seconds while he's at the ER and she's like his attending nurse or whatever, and they like instantly fall in love, and they're like, oh my god, I have to be with you all the time. Let's leave Haddonfield together. But we can't because of our terrible past. Because he tries to do normal things with her, but he's being shunned by the entire town. He kind of can't really go anywhere without people bringing up like this kind of terrible thing that he was a part of. And so we get this just a weird love story out of nowhere that's not super convincing.
Yeah, and regarding super convincing, like I think the cast is all right with who we've got here. Jamie Lee Curtis is good. Andy Matichak returns as Allison from the previous films. Rowan Campbell is the new kid, Corey. You got a couple other people. A couple of the officers are back, right? That one older guy who Laurie was kind of into, he's back. The guy who plays the Shape, the guy who plays the Shape, James Dew Courtney's back, and that's fine. My god, though, the script in the opening act of this movie is so bad. It's so bad. I was so bored for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like just waiting to see like where is this going. And you do have that sense of like mystery, like what am I watching? Where is this going? How is this supposed to end up at Michael Myers? And you do get this feeling of kind of evil over the town, especially with this kid who has this tragedy. But like the first 45 minutes are like a slog. Like it's, oh my god.
Michael Myers does not show up until like 45-50 minutes, and he doesn't do much when you do finally see. I mean, he's hardly in his own movie. Same thing with Laurie Strode. Again, the main character has generally been her or a lot of Michael Myers, and they are both sidelined by the newcomer Rowan Campbell, Corey.
Yes. And the problem is like Laurie, I don't mind so much. Like obviously you pay attention when she's there. But like the second Michael Myers shows up on screen, he is all you care about. He's all you're looking at. He steals every scene he's in. And no whether he's killing somebody or he's standing next to somebody or he's hiding behind a tree, like your eyes are constantly darting in the dark for the mask. Like that's the heat, that's the smoke. Like Halloween Ends brings. That's the thing all these other movies have done, and it's a shame that he gets kind of sidelined, at least for a while. Through one series of events or another, Michael Myers is ultimately found to still be in Haddonfield, and that's when we get a really unique relationship between some of our characters and this Myers, who has been basically hiding for 4 years. He is old and he is crippled after the events of Halloween Kills. His face mask is half melted and like he's clearly hobbling, like Kent just does not have it together. Like he is falling apart. And in that way,
living in the sewer, eating rats.
Eating sewer eating rats or something. Assumedly rats, right? Yeah. And in that way, like that opens the door for a bit of a transfer, right, between our former antagonist Michael Myers and this evil kind of force around Haddonfield that people have been crying for blood in, and now this kid Corey, who's like this martyr character. Like we start to feel like that the evil of Myers is not just inside of the man, like it is this kind of
it was inside us the whole time.
Right? Yeah, like the evil was the friends we made along the way. And I don't think that's bad. Like I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, but it doesn't. It's not quite as fun as watching a bunch of teenagers get murdered. You know what I mean? Like that'll always be the smoke. And Halloween Ends leans away from that. Like they don't spend a lot of time doing that. At least not until we get to actual Halloween night. Which thank God it gets there.
Barely
an hour of the movie.
Yeah, no,
finally.
That's one of the issues. Well, one of the things I wanted to say is Michael Myers is very different in this movie than he is in the previous one. In Halloween Kills, he's like supernatural, damn near invincible.
He's peak Myers.
Yeah,
right.
he's getting beat up, he's getting shot, getting stabbed, and nothing can stop him, you know. And there's a great line that Laurie has, like, the more he kills, the more he transcends, which doesn't mean anything, but it sounds cool. But he's
great.
But he's like supernatural basically, and now he's like basically got a cane and is, you know, getting bested by everyone. It's just it's a really bizarre take. And you're right. The other thing is the big part of this movie is Halloween. That's when most of everything is supposed to go down. We don't really get to Halloween until pretty late in the movie, and when we get there, you hardly even know it's Halloween. There's like one scene of kids in the street.
Yeah, I think it's over an hour. Yeah, there's never a single shot of kids trick-or-treating ever.
The first two movies,
there's no parents going to a Halloween party. Like,
yeah, the first two movies take place on Halloween night, and this one takes ages to get to Halloween.
It takes ages to get there because it starts this whole thing where it's like the town is healing and Myers has been gone. And it's like, it's a little bit of that problem Old has, right? Like I bought a ticket knowing it's Halloween and Myers is going to kill again. You cannot tell me in the first hour of the movie, oh, I guess problem solved. Like he's not around anymore. Like, so that's a bit of an issue. Like the pacing suffers. And again, that script is rough, man. The relationship between Allison and Corey is like really ham-fisted, and you think at first these characters are going to be a little bit denser than they are, but they all come off really one note. Like Laurie's really kind of head in the clouds. I've moved on. Allison is like total simple-minded. Oh yeah, let's get away. You know, Corey's like even surprisingly simple, which is a shame. Like it just makes for a dull open. But
yeah, like Michael Myers totally kills. He kills Laurie's daughter in the previous in Halloween Kills, and she's just like, yeah, I mean, it's that sucks. It sucks that happened, but you know, you got to go on. Like,
yeah, whatever. Yeah, you see a picture of like what's her name? She's like Laurie Strode's screensaver on her phone. She's her lock screen. Like that's when you see her. Like, oh, there she is. Rip. Yeah, like that's a bummer. I realize we're talking too long about this, so I do need to wrap it up. We do need to actually talk about the horror and the thrills and the chills because they do come, which is good stuff. I'm going to be honest. I think Halloween Kills handled this a little bit better. There's some good stuff in here for sure. There's one particular scene with Myers that's real good. He runs somebody through with this big old classic steak knife, and then he kind of leans back and he does this like shiver shudder thing, which is real weird. And then he keeps stabbing him, and I'm like, yeah, like that. I mean, that's good stuff, man. Like if he feels the evil coursing through him, it's good. It doesn't get much better than that though. Like they're fine. It's definitely not as violent as Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills, I think, will undoubtedly be the bloodiest of these three.
Yeah.
But it gets there, which is good. Like, because it needed to. Like, thank God you do actually get to a point where people are murdering people, and that's a good thing. Leading up to, of course, Laurie Strode and Michael Myers and their big face-off, which is unfortunately, I think a lot of it's in the trailers.
Yeah, so this is another issue is that the way this film ends feels like it could be the end of the second movie. Like you could just tack it on and it would
Kind of.
really make more sense and you wouldn't have a whole, an hour and a half of filler basically before you get to the final confrontation.
Yeah. I don't need my horror movies to have, incredibly elevated scripts. I don't expect everything to be written like an Academy Award winning production. In fact, for a lot of slasher movies, I'm fine with them being cheesy. Like I really am. That's part of what makes slasher movies work, right? It's just teenagers, having fun in the woods, and then somebody evil comes along and cuts them into fillets. But like this one like feels like it struggles because of the expectation that it is going to be something bigger, and it subverts that with being something smaller. It's a more intimate story. It's kind of not about Laurie and Michael so much. I don't think that's a bad thing, but it leads to being divisive. And I've seen people all over the internet like about this. People will say this is easily the worst one. Complete trash. Don't waste your time. I've seen other people be like, this might be one of the best of the entire series. This is top 5 material. I don't. Where do you land, Andy? What do you think?
I haven't seen all of them, and so it's hard for me to say. It's definitely I think the bottom of these three that I'm most familiar with, and again, it's not really a good Michael Myers movie. It's a decent horror movie on its own. It just doesn't really fit in with the rest of the franchise.
Yeah, I kind of land in the same boat. Like I felt like Halloween was pretty good, but I wanted more. And then Halloween Kills, I was like, okay, we're getting there. Big ending for 3, baby. I want all the
Nope.
fireworks. Give it to me. Wrong. Yeah, it's a boat show. You've been fooled. Like, and it's a little bit of a bummer, but it's not bad because again, in the same way, like Halloween Ends has the same like intro sequence as Halloween Season of the Witch. Like it's the same font choice. Like it is very obviously paying homage to Halloween Season of the Witch, but it also has to try to be a Halloween movie. And I think that's the problem. It's trying to juggle being its own thing and being a Halloween movie. And like, if it had picked one, it would have worked. I mean, when we saw it, Andy said right at the end of the movie, he's like, this could have been any slasher and it would have worked with this whole plot with the babysitter. It could have been a made up slasher. It could have been a Blumhouse picture. This is a Blumhouse picture actually, but like it could have been anything and it would have worked. And alternatively, like with the Myers plot, like you kind of could have put anything in the B plot and it probably would have worked fine. Like, unfortunately, it doesn't feel like the two have a good marriage, like of ideas to come together to make something that's like that everybody likes, and that's a problem.
I think we're ready for recommendations.
One more thing, good score.
Yes,
that old
classic
John Carpenter, man.
Carpenter
Turns out again, baby. Yeah, man can't miss. He gets his paychecks for people using Halloween, and he still does the scores, which are all good. So rock solid. Anyway, with that, this review ran way too long. Andy, would you recommend Halloween Ends?
I would recommend it to fans of the franchise. If you're a completionist and you like horror and the Halloween franchise, Michael Myers, all that, definitely check it out. Probably wait for streaming. If you have Peacock or if you know someone who does, you can borrow a login. Definitely no need to run out and see it in the theater, but definitely for the fans and save it for streaming.
We should make that a new like bracket in our review status, like save it for streaming, but don't pay for it. Like borrow the password.
Bum a password.
Yeah, bum a login. I'm kind of in the same boat. I unfortunately feel like the best possible way to watch Halloween Ends has already passed us. It was probably opening night, like with a packed theater. That would have been the best way to go because word's out now that it's different, and different is bad. Like especially in horror, what do you want? Do you want the same old Michael Myers slasher, or do you want something that's a departure and is doing something different and new? Maybe laying the groundwork for where the series might go after this. What that includes Michael Myers or not, I guess you'll have to watch it and see. Unfortunately, I'm not going to say definitively whether or not this is the end of Halloween Ends, like I think a lot of people are hoping. But I liked it. I think I liked it, and I think if I go back and watch these 3 again at some point, I may even look back on this one better. I think, yeah, in a decade, people might look back and go, actually, Halloween Ends was doing something kind of cool in the horror space. But for where it's at right now, it's either ahead of its time or it's a total miss. That's Halloween Ends.